Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. My name's Ehren. We're going to be checking out Question Period on Parliament Hill, October 6th. It's going to be a lot of fun. We've been doing this the last couple of weeks, so please stay tuned and subscribe, check it out, like, share, all that. We're learning about Canadian politics here. We're going to be trying to have some fun, kind of like WWE, having some fun with all of these clowns in the circus. It's fun, it's important, and it's what we've been doing, and we're going to continue to work at. We're just getting ready to get going here. I've heard on Fridays that a lot of MPs play hooky, so it'll be interesting to see if any of the players are going to be there today. We'll tune right in. Here we go.
Now, before we get going, I just want to remind everyone when it comes to SO31s to try to keep them under the 1 minute, the 60 seconds, because there was a few of them that did go a little bit over. Also, the reminder: we're asking questions in our seats, and we're answering the questions in our seats, because I see a lot of people moving around in the chamber. So I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that. Oral questions, question orale.
Here we go.
The honourable member.
Oral question. Let's go. October 6th. Question period. Let's get it going.
3 weeks ago, the Prime Minister made a promise that grocery prices would come down in time for Thanksgiving. Unfortunately, an article just out on the Canadian press today, prices haven't gone down, and you're going to continue to see fairly large sticker shock on items. This is Canada after 8 years of this Liberal NDP government, Mr. Speaker, but it gets worse. The article goes on to say some people will be looking at alternatives, so they might not have a big family gathering. Happy Thanksgiving, Canada, brought to you by this Liberal NDP government. Will the Prime Minister keep his promise and get grocery prices down?
He's not going to do it by Monday. He's going to be late if he's going to do it at all.
The honourable member for the question. Mr. Speaker, we've heard loud and clear from Canadians across this country that grocery prices need to come down. Our government gets up every morning, is working hard every day to lower those prices or stabilize those prices. Not only did we call the top largest 5 grocery CEOs to Ottawa, we got them on board to work on action plans that would help stabilize food prices for Canadians. That's just what they've done. We're seeing those actions roll out with price reductions and discounts on a basket of basic goods, and we look forward to future developments.
Didn't sound like much of an answer. Does that sound like grocery prices are really coming down?
Accurate. None of the prices are going down. I just read an article in the Canadian press. Canadians know that all the prices are going up. In fact, the Ottawa Mission is now asking for turkeys. Why? Because the price of a turkey has gone up 67% as a result of 8 years of this NDP Liberal government. The Prime Minister made a promise 3 weeks ago, so I'm going to ask again, Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister keep his promise to get grocery prices down so Canadians can have an affordable Thanksgiving, or is he just going to go back and hide in Rideau Cottage like he recently did?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Innovation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our government is taking action with grocery CEOs. They've gotten on board. They've produced plans. They're rolling out measures. They don't know what each other are going to do. They're going to be competing to bring down and stabilize those prices. There's many measures that will move forward in weeks and days to come. And this is good news for Canadians, Mr. Speaker, because grocery CEOs and those chains are now competing to stabilize food prices for Canadians.
The honourable
doesn't sound, it's just reading it from a piece of paper,
that
guys.
reminds me of when you would say things like the wheels are in motion, the check's in the mail, all those kinds of things. You know, Canadians can't eat a plan. Canadians can't eat the photo op that the Prime Minister took with grocery CEOs, because the facts are the facts. Grocery prices are way up, and they continue to go up despite these alleged plans and photo ops. Onions up 69%, potatoes up 76%, oranges up 77%, and turkeys up 67%. Will the Prime Minister keep his promise? It's not hard. He made that promise. Or will he just go off at another $200,000 vacation at taxpayer expenses in Montana?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Innovation.
I know it must be hard for the leader of the Conservative Party to really empathize with Canadians when surely he doesn't pay for turkeys at Stornoway. We know they're free. On federal leadership, we've demonstrated leadership.
This guy's not good.
Brought this 5 largest grocery chains to Ottawa, and we are moving forward with them to lower and stabilize food prices for Canadians. Those grocery chains are demonstrating Canadians will really be the judge of how satisfied they are.
Okay, this guy's a dud.
With those decreases.
This guy's a clown. He's a clown.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this Liberal government, everything is more expensive in Canada. But Thanksgiving is only 2 days away, and few people are in the mood to celebrate. The Prime Minister made some promises. 3 weeks ago, he said food prices would come down for Thanksgiving. Another broken promise. But what will happen is that there will be a second carbon tax, and this will be enthusiastically supported by the Bloc Québécois. If people
He's intense,
vote Bloc,
guys.
they'll pay for it.
He's fun to watch. He's a reason to tune in.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are,
Who do we
as
got
my
here?
colleague already said, we've already begun the work with the major grocery chains. They will work with us. Prices will come down for
Secretary
Canadians.
Day.
And what's more,
All the bosses play hooky on Friday.
we know that investments in climate change will produce results for Canadians. So we're going to work together to improve Canadians' quality of life.
I think they are
The Honourable
investing
Member for
in
Louis Saint Laurent.
climate change.
I'd like
But-
to
but not-
congratulate
not
the member
on the side that you
opposite,
think.
the parliamentary secretary,
we go.
on the quality of his French. Congratulations and thank you for making that effort. But that's not all, Mr. Speaker, because what he said was not quite consistent with reality. Prices are going up. The Prime Minister said they would go down. It's not true.
See, it's fun. These guys.
There are always sales at this time of year, but the
Staying
Liberals are
framed,
too
right?
greedy. They want to raise taxes. That's the worst thing to do when people are struggling. When are
paper,
they going to do
animated.
the right
This guy's
thing?
all right.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Check mark by his name. Good on
We
him.
are working with grocery stores, with the industry.
Okay, good. Staying away from the paper. It's good.
Directions are given, when the instructions are given to lower prices, that's what they're going to do. They've started doing so already. Canadians will see this in the days to come. That's the fact. The Conservatives can say whatever they want. They can shout for all they're worth. But they're not really doing anything for Canadians.
he seems
Our
like a
plan
nice
will
guy, but
improve
none of
things
what he
for
just said
Canadians. The Honourable Member for Saint
appears at the grocery
Mr.
store to me,
Speaker, this week,
and I'm a poor
Radio-Canada profiled foreign workers exploited by the multinational corporation New
She wears
Rest.
nice earrings,
They were
though.
told, come to Canada on a tourist visa, work for us, and we'll give you a work permit later. This, of course, was
She wore
not
a
true,
housecoat to
and
work
they are
Friday.
subjected
It's
to
a
illegal
casual day.
working conditions under threat of deportation. According to the Centre des Travailleurs Immigrants, 400 people in 2 years have fallen victim to the same trap after being recruited by an employment agency, Agence Trésor. Has the Immigration Minister taken charge of this issue?
Let's see.
Temporary foreign workers
Here we
is
go.
unacceptable.
Sean
Everyone
it?
deserves
No.
to work in
It's gonna
safe,
be the
healthy, and
secretary.
dignified conditions.
Secretary
Under our
Day.
watch, we have
Friday, man.
mandated
All
that
the bosses
employers
play
provide
hooky.
all TFWs with
Secretary Day.
information about their rights in Canada. Prohibited reprisal by employers against workers who come forward with complaints, and prohibited employers from charging recruitment fees
voted
to workers.
for this guy?
We know there is more work to do, Mr. Speaker. That's why we are strengthening our integrity measures to ensure that temporary foreign workers live and work in a safe and decent environment. Thank you.
So they say there's
The
about
Honourable
one
for
member of
Saint-Jean.
parliament for
Mr.
every
Speaker,
100,000
the report
people.
talks about a specific case, but it's hard to believe that's
people
the
vote
only
for that?
one. It's even harder to believe that Immigration Canada has the situation under control, having lost track
Check out the guy
of
behind
a
me,
million
like, sniffing his
temporary
fingers. Look,
immigrants.
over there.
Obviously, we need to
Sniffing his
prevent this
fingers.
illegal exploitation in our country and crack down on criminal enterprises. But the minister must also make it known abroad that this practice is a trap. Once again, my question for the minister, what's he doing to put an end to this disgusting exploitation?
Of employment.
Mr. Speaker, temporary foreign workers have the same rights to workplace protections as Canadians. We have a requirement that employers and recruiters cannot charge or recover recruitment
Get off
fees
the
to
paper, bro.
TFWs, for example. We launched the
Christ,
Migrant
you
Worker
MPs.
Support Program to assist TFWs in learning about and exercising their rights. We will continue engaging migrant worker support organizations, employers, and other partners to further strengthen protections for Canada's temporary foreign workers. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
There's a lot of MPs missing
honourable
today.
member for
Trudeau's
Edmonton,
missing.
Griesbach.
Christie is missing. Sean Fraser's missing.
glacial pace.
Francois
That
Philippe
is how
Champagne
a
is missing.
report described
Bobby
the
Lee in
speed
the
at which
house.
The Liberals have been moving to implement the Truth and
Mad TV.
Reconciliation calls to action. An average of just 2 calls to action per year. At this rate, it will take 42 years to complete all of them. For a government that says they're committed to reconciliation, their actions tell a different story. When will this government pick up the pace and ensure that all the calls to action are implemented without delay?
The Honourable Minister
Blake
of
is
Indigenous
pretty entertaining.
Services.
He can be fun to watch too.
Let's
It's
roll
worth
back the tape a bit. In
checking in.
2015, when we were elected, the former Conservative government refused to meet with Indigenous leaders in this country. In fact, Indigenous leaders could not meet with the Prime Minister, could not move forward an agenda of reconciliation whatsoever. In fact, the previous Prime Minister said that an inquiry into the murdered and missing Indigenous women in this country was not on his radar. We have moved, Mr. Speaker, in tangible ways, including in equity, and we will continue to do that hard work.
Okay.
The Honourable Member for Nunavut.
She was pretty good. That one was good.
That was a disappointing response, but I'll turn to a question on uncovered hundreds of the searches that have uncovered hundreds of children's graves at former residential schools across the country. As communities grieve, they are looking for answers. Due to a lack of clarity from all levels of government, these families can't access the records they deserve. Even the government's special interlocutor is experiencing barriers. When will this government take responsibility and give Indigenous peoples the funding and access to information they need towards healing?
The Honourable Minister
Multiple
of
levels of
Indigenous
government fail
Relations.
the Indigenous people.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague from Nunavut for that question. Residential schools are a sad reality in Canada's history, and their painful legacy continues to be felt today across Canada. We're working in partnership to provide the resources needed as communities continue to the very important and challenging work of locating, identifying, and commemorating the remains of those who were stolen from their families and prevented from coming home. As of today, we have supported 117 commemoration and search projects for a total of $160.4 million. As more potential burial sites are found at former residential schools, we remain committed to supporting communities in addressing their own priorities as they work to.
So when you're watching, something to pay attention to is that there's 338
food banks are on the front line of
MPs.
the cost of living and food insecurity crisis created by 8 years of this NDP Liberal government. In Barrie, food bank usage is up 94% in 1 year. Executive Director Sharon Palmer told Simco.com this week, with rents where they are, the price of gas and food where they are, we're seeing more families who are struggling. There's no evidence anywhere that the Prime Minister's promise that he made 3 weeks ago has lowered grocery prices. So where are the grocery prices and why haven't they been lowered?
It seems like they're asking the same question a lot of times, but the Liberals promised, Trudeau promised to have the prices down by Thanksgiving.
Is the only group in this,
only
party in this House that is prepared to take action. We have called in the CEOs of the largest grocery chains. They have come back with a response. We have worked with the manufacturers. They are coming back with a response. These responses are going to result in a direct benefit to Canadians in lower prices, and that work is going to continue. We're going to hold them to account. We're going to keep holding them to account so that the affordability that Canadians deserve is delivered to them.
The Honourable Member for Barrie Innisfil.
Promise hasn't been kept. The cost of living and food insecurity crisis created after 8 years of this NDP Liberal government has also hit families hard as they go to buy turkey this weekend. Prices for turkeys have shot up 67% since 2015. On top of that, potatoes are up 77%, while carrots are up 74% in the same time. The legend of the bird's power to induce sleepiness, a sort of turkey coma, is proving to be a myth as Canadians have now awakened to the fact that the Prime Minister is not worth the cost. So where are the lower grocery prices that he promised 3 weeks ago?
Why would you promise to lower prices?
Mr. Speaker, our government is fighting for Canadians on affordability every step of the way. We're fully seized with addressing the affordability challenges that Canadians are facing. We've called in the top 5 grocery chain CEOs to help stabilize food prices. They've come up with plans that they're now implementing. The fact that Conservatives call that a photo op, I think decisive action for Canadians. A photo op says more about them, Mr. Speaker, than it does about us. Regardless of Conservative attacks, we will keep pressing on and fighting for affordability for Canadians.
That's great. We sort of made it nice and quiet until question 12. Congratulations to everyone. The honourable member for Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman.
I think I like the backup speaker more than the lead speaker.
That over 7 million Canadians are struggling to put food on their tables. So let's talk turkey. Under the last Conservative government, turkey cost only $2.49 a pound, but under these Liberals, it's $1.49 that Canadians have to pay. That's a 67% increase. The Liberal NDP carbon tax is hurting everyday Canadians who are just trying to have a nice Thanksgiving dinner with their families. After 8 long years of these Liberals, Canadians have had enough. So why aren't these Liberals axing the carbon tax so Canadians can bring home affordable dinners this Thanksgiving weekend?
They're going hard on the groceries, guys.
To the government House Leader.
Thank you.
I hate going to the
Mr.
grocery
Speaker,
store. Like, I used to like it.
I listen to Conservatives across the way filibuster a bill that will really make a difference. When you talk about competition, as a government, we want to see competition. That's one of the reasons why we called to the Ottawa, the 5 major grocery chains. What do the Conservatives say? It's an op. When it comes to legislation, what do they do? Talk, 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 Mr. Speaker. They're not prepared to get behind Canadians when they need to be there in a very real and tangible way. Stand up and
getting her
vote
going,
for
man.
legislation.
Getting her going.
The honourable member for
Good for you.
Lake Eastman.
Good for you.
Like a bunch of gobbly. My riding, some of the best turkey producers are in all of Canada, but the Liberal NDP carbon tax is increasing the cost to feed their turkeys and heat their barns. When the Liberals tax the farmers who grow the food and tax the trucker who ships the food, Canadians have to pay more to buy the food. Canadians know that this Liberal NDP coalition is just not worth the cost. So will the Prime Minister stop his photo ops, get back to work, and axe the carbon tax, or is he just going to wreck Thanksgiving for everyone?
It's pretty good, guys. It's pretty good.
Honourable Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
It's pretty fun. See?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I would like to remind my colleague that the dairy
yes,
farmers of Canada have committed that to reach net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. The Egg Farmers Association of Canada have also announced that they want to reach net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. The Grain Growers Association of Canada, Mr. Speaker, have also committed to reach net zero by 2050. Farmers understand how climate change is impacting their sector and how we need to put measures in place to fight it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
It's annoying how they hide behind climate change. And they come up with carbon tax. It sucks. And that's supposed to be the environmental initiative.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this government, Canada's in debt, torn apart, and humiliated. Despite this, the Bloc Québécois is supporting the Liberals on the carbon tax 2.0. They've even voted in favor of this tax twice. Now the Bloc is calling for the tax to be radically increased. If you vote for the Bloc, you'll pay for it. With Thanksgiving just around the corner, what does the government intend to do to ensure that Canadians can have the nice dinner they were promised?
They're not going to have that nice dinner. The Bloc seems to be, not the federal Bloc, the provincial Bloc seems to be wreaking havoc in Quebec.
Speaker.
With the environment.
I think a lot of Canadians are wondering why the Conservative Party of Canada is supporting the Alberta Premier.
He's great when he speaks
Daniel
in English
Smith.
as well. It's pretty entertaining.
$30 billion is at risk. They say they're in favor of clean energy and the free market. So why is that party preventing progress? And are they going to do this in Quebec too? Will the Conservatives oppose the development of clean energy in Quebec, in Nova Scotia, and in Ontario? I think Canadians are entitled to know. The honourable member for Bellechasse.
All right.
The Liberals' inflationary taxes supported by the Bloc are having a serious impact. According to a recent survey, 46% of consumers buy on price at the expense of quality, and 63% fear these choices will have a negative impact on their health. And contrary to what the Bloc would have us believe, the carbon tax 2.0 applies in Quebec and raises the cost of everything. It's simple, Mr.
Straight
Speaker.
from the paper,
Can this
though,
government show
Dominique.
some empathy and cancel both carbon taxes? It's very simple.
half a sentence.
The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Come on, Stephen.
What I find incomprehensible, Mr. Speaker, is that in 2023 there's a party aspiring to form government with no plan to fight climate change. They have nothing to say to the tens of thousands of Quebecers who were affected by floods, by wildfires, and so on, who were displaced in Quebec and elsewhere in the country. But the Bloc is saying, the Conservative Party rather, is saying, you know what we're going to do? We're going to make pollution free. We're going to encourage people to pollute even more, to pollute our air, to pollute our water, and to undermine our health. That's the Conservative Party's plan. The Honourable Member for Terrebonne. Mr. Speaker, our small and medium-sized businesses can't repay their emergency account loans on time after being squeezed by inflation. If the federal government doesn't offer them flexibility, 250,000 of them will go bankrupt next year, according to the Federation of Independent Businesses. The Quebec National Assembly has heard their desperate plea and is unanimously calling on the federal government to substantially extend the deadline for repayment of loans granted through the emergency account. Mr. Speaker, will the government listen to the National Assembly and do something about this?
Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
They're probably not.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of the things that we recognize is the small
this guy got fired up last time.
Is the backbone of our Canadian economy in all regions of our country. That is one of the reasons why we developed during the pandemic programs such as loan supports, rent supports, wage losses supports, Mr. Speaker, because we understand the importance of small businesses to Canada. The Minister will continue to work with small business to ensure that we're there to have their back and protect our jobs into the future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Seems a lot more legitimate when they're not reading from a piece of paper.
Mr. Speaker, that's not clear. We're talking about the emergency account. The National Assembly is all saying the same thing. We're heading for 250,000 small businesses going bankrupt unless Ottawa assesses each case and offers deferrals as needed. If the federal government thinks it's going to get its money back faster with 250,000 bankruptcies, they're mistaken. If the federal government thinks it's profitable to put the employees of all those companies out of work, they're wrong. When will this government see reason? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
We had made an announcement just recently that saw a bit of an extension. We are very much aware of the pains that small businesses are experiencing, due in good part because of the pandemic. And as I say, as a government, whether it's been reducing taxes for small businesses, whether it's been there to support them in regards to, as made reference to rent subsidies, wage losses, CEBA loans, the Government of Canada is there for small businesses because we recognize just how important they are to our economy in all regions of our country.
I bet if you took a survey of entrepreneurs out there, seeing how much the Liberal government cared
this NDP Liberal coalition has driven demand for food banks to a 42-year high. The Liberal MP for Avalon said, "I've had people tell me they can't afford to buy groceries." CTV News has reported that a large number of people can't afford Thanksgiving dinner this year. For those people, especially, and this Prime Minister to them is not worth the cost. So, will he axe the carbon tax to lower prices, or will he break his promise to Newfoundlanders and Labradorians?
I think he's reading tips on how to present, like a bullet list.
Is that member opposite purports himself to stand up for fish harvesters, but you know what? The fishers across this country tell us that climate change is real, that they are concerned about the future of fish harvest, about the future of their economies in local communities. So if the member opposite cares about affordability in Newfoundland and Labrador, why do they vote against technology and advancement in industry to fight climate change and ultimately protect fish harvesters in Newfoundland and Labrador?
It's a good job. Good job. She's fired up. Good for her. It's fun. It's fun.
The Parliamentary Secretary should know better. And her 23 buddies from Atlantic Canada should know better, because they all voted against the motion to axe carbon tax that we put forward earlier this week.
Just gotta get off the
The lone holdout over there, the Liberal member for Avalon, said that everywhere he goes, people are losing faith in the Liberal Party. To lower food prices in a province like Newfoundland and Labrador, so dependent on fuel for shipping, carbon tax has to go. So will this Prime Minister axe the tax to lower prices for food in Newfoundland and Labrador, or will he break his promise?
Get him going. Get him going, Clifford Small. Good for you.
Mr. Speaker, over the course course of the past 8 years, we've had a number of opportunities to see where the Conservative Party stands when it comes to supporting measures that are actually going to fight climate change and create good jobs in our region. Time after time, they oppose reasonable measures that are going to reduce pollution, that are going to prevent the kinds of severe weather events that my communities have been impacted by, including Hurricane Fiona, including wildfires like we've never seen, including floods that have literally taken the lives of my community members. The Conservatives have a chance to support a concrete measure by voting for C-49, which will create good-paying jobs in clean industries. Why does that member oppose good-paying jobs in his community?
Oh my God. Sean wants to fight him. Good for you. It's fun.
People of Central Nova want to know why that member voted 23 times to increase their taxes and increase the cost of food. And after 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, even this Prime Minister's own MPs are admitting that people cannot afford to buy groceries. Lettuce up 94%, onion 69%, carrots 74%. In the last year of the Conservative government, a turkey cost $1.49 a pound. Now it's $2.49 a pound. That's a Liberal 67% increase. This Liberal Prime Minister is just not worth the cost. The Prime Minister has promised to reduce grocery prices. Why is he breaking his promise?
Good for you, Perkins. Good for you. Look at all the green seats, though. That's where taxes are going.
The people of Central Nova are benefiting from a middle tax class cut we put in place back in 2015. They are benefiting from a Canada Child benefit, which delivers thousands of dollars every year to families who are struggling with the cost of raising kids. The people of Central Nova are benefiting from a new Canada Dental benefit. The people of Central Nova are benefiting from new measures that are going to build more houses. The people of Central Nova are going to benefit from measures that are going to help protect against further rises in the cost of groceries. I wonder if the people of South Shore St. Margaret's are starting to ask questions about why their member opposes all of these points.
He's got talent. He's kind of fun. It's a lot of fun.
South Shore St. Margaret's are asking why
Get him going, Rick.
Solution to the grocery food challenge is that they should watch flyers and clip coupons. But only one Liberal actually understands what's happening and is listening to their constituents when people are saying that they cannot afford to heat their homes and buy food. This MP, Liberal MP, said that Liberals have made it more expensive on people to a level that they can't handle. Even that Liberal believes that this Prime Minister is not worth the cost. So I'll ask again, will this Prime Minister keep his promise to lower food costs, yes or no?
It's a good one. It's a good one. Good for you.
Mr. Speaker, I will be the first to acknowledge that we need to do more to continue to support low-income families who are struggling with the rising cost of living. But if the honourable member is asking questions about families who are having challenges trying to heat their homes, why did he describe our program that's helping cover the cost of heat pumps to get people off home heating oil as some fairy tale program? Mr. Speaker, we give upfront cash to families so they can cover the cost without having to put it up their own money first. Mr. Speaker, we're going to continue to advance measures that are going to make life more affordable, that are going to mitigate against further rises to the cost of groceries, and are going to help the people who call my community home.
He's like Neo in The Matrix.
Mr. Speaker, it is Thanksgiving weekend, and 3 out of 5 Canadians are being forced to take healthy food out of their cars because of the cost. After 2 years of inaction, the Liberals' out-of-touch solution is to leave it up to rich grocery CEOs. And we know Conservatives have no serious plans to confront corporate greed. A year ago, the NDP successfully launched an investigation into food prices, and now we have a bill that will lower prices, not just stabilize them. So will the Liberals do the right thing, support the NDP's plan to lower food prices?
Get out of here. Get out of here.
Mr. Speaker, we are doing
Coalition government.
Which is to bring the grocery CEOs of the largest grocery chains in the country to the table, getting them on board with an action plan to help fight on affordability
you're a clown,
for
bud.
Canadians.
They've
committed to implementing action plans that include discounts on a basket of basic goods,
Not a fan.
Bringing back price matching, because some of them didn't have that before, and price freezes for Canadians. I don't think that those measures are insignificant. I think they're going to make a tangible difference for Canadians, but Canadians will be the judge, and we'll find out in the coming days and weeks.
Well, Ryan Turnbull better do some practicing in front of the mirror with oat paper.
Mr. Speaker, accessible transit is critical for people living with disabilities. But in this country, transit is underfunded, so not meeting accessibility demands. In my community, this means the Transit Authority is pushing people into taxis that don't meet their needs. Because the Liberals are holding back federal transit funding until 2026, Canadians with disabilities are being left behind. Will the minister immediately release the public transit funding that's been promised and bring equity to transit?
Okay, accessibility and transit issues for
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my honourable
disabled,
colleague for her question, but also for her concern for people
attention.
living with disabilities. One of the things that we know well is that when we invest in public transit, it helps people move throughout their communities, disproportionately benefiting low-income families, people living with disabilities, and seniors. That's why we made historic investments through the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Plan to have unprecedented levels of federal money going towards building out transit projects, including accessible transit projects. That's why we move forward with the Rural Transit Solutions Fund to make sure that small communities benefit, and that's why we have now committed to a permanent public transit fund that will be coming in the years ahead to ensure we continue to make these investments going forward in perpetuity.
The honourable member for
It's like dance party. Remember that?
Mr. Speaker, teachers across the country deserve recognition every day for shaping the lives of our young people and encouraging them.
Come on, look at all the green seats.
Can the PS for the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry update this House on
Oh,
the Prime
this
Minister's
is a
award for teaching
bullshit part of
excellence in the STEM
question
fields
period.
and what
Where
we're doing to
you see this
support
gentleman, he's from the
students
Liberal
and
Party.
educators
He's teeing
in
up
this
one of
important
his
subject?
The honourable parliamentary
party
secretary
members
to the
to
Minister of
hit a home
Innovation.
run, and they're not going to. They're going to read from another. Here we go. He's reading.
For his important question, and I'm sure
Why don't
that
they
all of
set
us
this stuff up
have had
better?
a teacher
Lazy.
or many in mind who we know have shaped our futures in significant ways.
Boo.
The PM's awards for teaching excellence in science, technology, and math recognize elementary and high school teachers across the country who have meaningfully contributed to the lives of their students by supporting and mentoring them.
Almost put his hand in his
Today
pocket.
and every day, we should continue to recognize the impactful role that educators play in setting their students up for success in their future endeavors. To teachers, we say thank you.
It's empty. It's an empty thank you.
Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
The ArriveCan scandal is back in the news, and reports are that the two-man operation that made $11 million off the Arrive scam were running a scheme that now has officials being investigated by the RCMP.
Oh, he is on paper.
After 8 years of this Prime Minister and his NDP Liberal government, Liberal insiders are getting rich, and Canadians are seeing that this Prime Minister just isn't worth the cost. When will this Prime Minister stop putting Liberal insiders and his friends first and start looking out for the needs of Canadians?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, we expect that all contracts issued follow the
Oh,
laws
I know
and regulations of this country. Any allegations of misconduct will be investigated. And Mr. Speaker, let me assure all Canadians that the government is looking forward to any results of these reviews and recommendations. But Mr. Speaker, misconduct and wrongdoing will have consequences.
The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
Well, Mr. Speaker, you'll have to excuse us if we're not just going to take their word for it. What we want to hear from this government is that the NDP Liberal coalition is going to vote in favour of an investigation at the Government Operations Committee so that Canadians can have transparency and answers. This $54 million boondoggle that saw insiders getting rich while Canadians are lined up at food banks is absolutely unacceptable. And now with the Mounties knocking at the door, they're saying, please just trust us and we're going to make sure all the rules were followed. They weren't followed before, and we don't trust that they're going to make sure that they were followed now. So will this out-of-touch Prime Minister have his NDP Liberal government?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
No, Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we trust our law enforcement agencies, like the RCMP, to investigate any wrongdoings. We don't
How did
think
the Nazi
that
get in the House?
Conservative members who want to make a political clickbait out of this actually get to the bottom of any sort of wrongdoing. Mr. Speaker, we take allegations very seriously.
She's running out of energy, guys.
With that, Mr. Speaker, we're going to ensure that investigations move forward with integrity and not for conservative political gain. But, Mr. Speaker, wrongdoing will have consequences.
The Honourable Member for Sturgeon River Parkland.
She's got no endurance. She went once and then she blew her load. She's done.
All
all the stops
All
to
right.
prevent an investigation into
Ryan,
the
I think.
shocking and
Ryan?
incomprehensible transfer of notorious killer
Dane
Paul
Lloyd,
Bernardo
yeah.
from a maximum security prison. Victims' families were not
This is a
even
bad one
informed
here.
of the transfer
This is-
until it
imagine
was
this
already
happened to
underway.
somebody
So much for
if your
victims'
family was
rights.
attached to that.
Canadians and victims' families' trust in our justice system has been shattered by this failure, and it's up to us in this House to restore that trust. So when will the Liberals stop preventing accountability and let the Public Safety Committee investigate?
Here. Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
The remarkable thing is Canadians are resilient.
The
We keep
fact
trusting.
is, it was
So
actually
naive.
our motion that many parties agreed to actually conduct an
She had a
investigation,
Red
to
Bull.
conduct a study on the issue of transfers. And the Conservatives are in damage control right now because, Mr.
jeans.
Speaker, they actually voted against it. I find it appalling that the Conservative members would use the issue of one of these, the most heinous crimes against women, as a way to fundraise and create clickbait. Mr. Speaker, if they want to conduct this study, then support the motion that we put on the floor to do so.
Oh,
The
yeah.
Honourable
Good
Member
for
for
you.
Sturgeon River Parkland.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's
just needed
that
some
Liberal
rest.
member and her colleagues who voted against the Conservative motion to bring victims' representatives to committee 2 times, Mr. Speaker. They don't want an investigation. They want a whitewash. Now, I wish I didn't have to stand in this House and ask these questions today. I wish that
Especially
killer
on a
Paul
Friday.
Bernardo was sitting in a maximum security prison today. I wish that this Liberal government hadn't stood by and let this transfer happen, but it did. Canadians deserve answers. Canadians' families deserve to know why and how this was allowed to happen. So the Liberals can let us get those answers by letting the public safety investigate. Will they? Yes or no?
Woo. Good one, Dane. Good one.
The
Get
Honourable
them going.
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, we supported and put forward a motion to study these very transfers. The fact that the Conservatives would use heinous crimes and the suffering against women and violence against women as a way to block government legislation, which, by the way, Mr. Speaker, C20 would have tangible results to protect women in the workplace, sexual harassment. The Conservatives time and time again use clickbait instead of real action to protect
Wound up.
women.
Woo. Good for you, girl. Let him have it.
The Honourable Member for
Phoebe.
Abitibi, Bay James, Nunavut, EU. Mr. Speaker, groceries are more expensive than ever before. Let me remind you of the last election
What
campaign.
do we got here now?
The Liberals promised $1 billion over 5 years to Quebec and the provinces
Sylvie Berube.
to fund school lunch programs, but we've heard nothing more about it. Inflation is hitting families hard.
I care about the Bloc
It's high
MPs
time
about as much
that the
as they
government
care about
finally
me.
respect this promise. When will the government finally give Quebec and the provinces the $1 billion it promised? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Heritage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Everyone knows that things are a little difficult for Canadians right now, and we will continue to work hard to help. We are working closely with the provinces, including Quebec.
He's just learning how
help
to
in a variety
speak
of different
publicly.
areas, including
Tough place,
school lunches. We
question
will work
period.
together to accomplish that.
Secretary
The Honourable Member
Friday.
for Abitibi, Bay James, Nunavut, EU. Mr. Speaker, 1.8 million children were already living with food insecurity last year, and the price of food keeps going up. It is high time that we help these children. There are many excellent organizations in Quebec who are waiting for the funding promised by the Liberals. And Quebecers support these organizations. 84% of Quebecers want the Liberals to keep their promise. When will the government give Quebec and the provinces the $1 billion they promised for school lunches?
Those poor Quebecois children, not
The
only are they
Honourable
starving,
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister
but they
of
have to live in
Heritage.
Quebec. Just kidding.
It is unacceptable that any child in this country not be able to eat appropriately. Everyone should be able to put food on the table. We need to continue to work with the provinces. We will continue to work together to correct the situation. That is very important for all of us here.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Centre.
Mr. Speaker, Canada's banking regulator has reported that 1 in 5 mortgages at 3 banks are in negative
amortization.
Who's
In
this
simple
guy?
terms, homeowners can't afford to pay their mortgages.
Greg.
Mortgage rates
Greg?
have increased at the fastest pace in history because of this government's failed policies. Deficits lead to inflation, which lead to higher interest rates, which of course should be obvious to the NDP Liberal coalition right now, lead to higher mortgage costs. When are the Liberals going to acknowledge the pain their broken economic policies are causing Canadians and end these massive deficits?
How do some of these people get elected? I wonder, man.
To the Minister of Heritage Canada.
Mr. Speaker,
Look at
let's
all the
look
green
at the facts,
seats. That's
because
where your
something
tax
we do
money's
on this
going.
side of the House. Inflation is half
Empty
what it was
seats on a
last
Friday,
July.
playing hooky.
We know,
It's a long
we know
weekend,
for a fact
extra
that
long
there are
weekend.
over 1 million jobs that have been created since the pandemic, almost 64,000 jobs alone in September. We know that life is challenging for Canadians, but we also know that the steps that are being taken are going to make life more affordable for Canadians, and that is the work that we are doing on this side of the House. If Conservatives care about Canadians and about affordability, why do they keep voting against every single measure we put forward to make life affordable for Canadians?
Okay, I take one back on this guy. He has trouble speaking French. His delivery is different when he's speaking French, and I respect him for his Poilievre français.
Selective statistics, yeah, 68,000 jobs got created in September. That's because there's less people actually working full time. The actual number of hours worked has gone down by 0.2%.
Come on, Greg, let loose. It's Friday.
Many Canadian home owners now are clearly underwater on their mortgage payments.
Going through puberty.
And the number is growing by 100,000 per month. After 8 years, a home affordability crisis is upon us. It's obvious the NDP Liberal government is not worth the increasing cost. Sooner than later, please, will the government get rid of the way, out of the way so Conservatives can fix
trying.
what they've so obviously...
Have a nice time.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
If we look at the history
sharp
of conservative
dressers.
mismanagement
He speaks well in
of
English.
this
He's
country,
excellent.
Canadians should be grateful that there is no conservative government currently in control.
Off the
The
paper,
reality is that under this government, our AAA credit rating continues to be the hallmark. You look at the G7, we continue to lead. We continue to be a strong player in terms of where our credit rating lies, in terms of where inflation numbers are, and most importantly, Mr. Speaker, in terms of the supports that we are giving Canadians to help them today.
They keep our credit rating high so we can keep borrowing money. Man,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know that the cost
if you have a
of
bad
living is
rating,
going
you
up.
can't get more money,
For
so they
example,
keep our
this
rating
week
high.
In the Journal de Québec, we saw the following. It's catastrophic. For the first time in 37 years, requests for food assistance are being refused. This shows that our society is facing a serious problem. And yet, during this difficult time, the Bloc Québécois wants to radically increase the second carbon tax. Shouldn't this government show a little humanity? Shouldn't it care more about helping our food banks? That's just common
Looks like
sense.
Graham Greene.
The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Looks like Graham Greene. All right, Stephen Guilbeault.
I'd like to understand how exactly is it common sense to put a moratorium on renewable energy projects that would create tens of thousands of jobs, that represent tens of billions of dollars, and yet that's what the Conservative Party supports. That's what the Premier of Alberta is doing. My question to the Bloc Québécois, to the Conservative Party. What will they do about these renewable projects in Quebec? Do they stand against renewable energy projects in the Atlantic region and in Ontario?
As they speak about renewable projects, look at all the green seats that your tax dollars are paying. These guys get paid. The basic MP gets paid 200,000 Canadian, 189. I think. For a first,
the honourable member for Notre-Dame-de-Grâce, Westmount. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All right.
Our Liberal government is a proud defender of the Canadian supply management system. The dairy sector
From the book.
is a key pillar of communities throughout Quebec.
Come on, lady.
And a major engine of our economy. We know that the government has committed to fully and fairly compensating producers and processors who have lost market share due to recent trade agreements. How is this government helping the Quebec dairy industry and the dairy industry elsewhere in the country? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Agriculture. Well, Mr. Speaker, we're keeping our promise. Last week, the Minister announced $333 million for dairy processors.
And he's the Secretary.
This is great news for our dairy producers and processors. It's good news for Quebec and Canada, Mr. Speaker.
Is it?
Fun fate.
Chris making a joke up there.
For Oshawa.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years, the NDP Liberal approach to addiction is not worth the risk. According to Durham Region Health, opioid deaths have gone up almost 700% under this NDP Liberal government. Our loved ones are suffering and dying under this dangerous safe supply experiment. There are 3 Liberal MPs in Durham Region, and one of them is now the Minister of Health. Safe supply is a nice marketing slogan, but it's not worth the cost. Does the minister really consider a 700% increase in deaths safe?
Honourable Minister of Mental Health and Addictions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And, you know, this week was Mental Illness Awareness Week, Mr. Speaker, and this is the first question we've gotten this week from the Conservatives.
She looks like a therapist. She looks like somebody at an intake center.
So I'll answer the member by saying this. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we don't put in a false narrative between harm reduction and treatment. We look at Canadians and where they need help each and every day. On the on the overdose and toxic drug supply in this country, we will continue to use every tool we have. Prevention, harm reduction, law enforcement, and treatment, Mr. Speaker, because we will be there to save lives.
What she meant to say was, don't worry, guys, Galen Weston's going to have it all under control. We're hooking him up.
It's 13 addiction experts, and if she would read the letters and take her advice, which clearly states we believe that is irresponsible for unsupervised, free government-funded hydromorphone to be allowed to continue. Mr. Speaker, in Oshawa, I've witnessed this travesty at firsthand. In the first 4 months alone, there's been 2,541 calls for service to downtown Oshawa. After 8 years, it's not that the NDP Liberal government has done nothing, they've actually made it worse. This reckless approach is not worth the cost. When are they going to end it?
Save the honourable read the last half of a quarter of a sentence.
Mr. Speaker, it's not worth taking the risk on the outdated perspectives of the Conservative government when it comes to addiction. I'll quote Ben Ehren, the Public Safety and Justice Advisor, former Prime Minister Harper, in this House, who sat in this House and said this. They're not aware. They're not. It's the opposition.
She can't even read very well.
Long since been discredited.
I can't read no good.
To not only be ineffective, but costly and deadly. Mr. Speaker, Conservatives are not worth the risk when we're here to save lives.
This is a pretty pendant.
The honourable member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years, the Liberal carbon tax was supposed to lower
greenhouse
gas emissions, but after 8 years, they're higher than ever.
Somebody that likes to read from paper.
And groceries are unaffordable. After 8 years, the Liberals were supposed to have alternatives to carbon, like better transit and EV charging stations everywhere. But they failed on that too. And now whistleblowers say that nearly $40 million for clean technology was misdirected by Liberal appointees. So for the sake of the planet, will the Liberals admit they're making Canadians poor, Liberal insiders richer, and that they're just not worth the cost?
The Honourable Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
She said a couple of good things, but her delivery's poor.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians and the world, frankly, can't afford the Conservative Party of Canada. With the Conservative Party of Canada gone are the programs to support more than 300 projects that are under construction for transit all across the country. Electric buses that have been announced in Alberta, in Ontario, in Quebec, gone on those programs. Gone are the programs to help people lower their energy bills, save money, so they can both fight climate change and fight affordability at the same time. Those problems, those initiatives will be gone under the Conservative Party of Canada. That's what Canadians can expect from them. Thank you.
Interesting.
The honourable member for Mississauga-Malton.
Mr. Speaker, climate change is one of the most pressing issues of our time, and carbon pricing is the backbone of our climate plan. It's been 1 year since the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada was named leader, and he has offered Canadians absolutely nothing in terms of climate policy. No plans, no solutions. In 2023, Canadians know how important it is to fight climate change. Our government has a plan to address both affordability and climate change, but the Conservatives don't have either. Our government's approach is working. Can the Minister of Environment tell us how a household can expect to receive next week?
MPs are good at reading.
What they can expect to receive next week with the federal government's pollution pricing rebate.
Or they're able to read.
The Honourable Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Not only is
Harry Potter in the House
pollution one of the best way to fight climate change, which is why our emissions are down 50 million tons, Mr. Speaker. It's the equivalent of removing 11 gas-powered vehicles from our road. But next Friday, Canadians can expect to get in Alberta $386, $264 in Manitoba, $244 in Ontario, $340 in Saskatchewan, $328 in Newfoundland and Labrador, $248 in Nova Scotia, $240 in Prince Edward Island, and $368 in New Brunswick, which is a double payment, Mr. Speaker. This is how we're helping Canadians fight climate change and work on affordability.
The honourable member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Mr. Speaker, Canada's blood inventory is entering its fourth month of serious shortages. The first time this has ever happened. This dangerous situation is putting patients at risk. If collections drop further, elective surgeries may have to be cancelled. Now, experts warned the Liberals that privatizing plasma collection would jeopardize our blood supply. Allowing companies to pay donors is clearly hurting Canadian blood services. What is this government doing to protect our national blood supply?
That's the question. If you need blood, you're going to want us to have a healthy supply, right?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ensuring the safety and quality of Canada's blood supply is our top priority. Health Canada regulates the plasma sites to ensure plasma products sold in Canada are manufactured in accordance with strict safety standards. Health Canada will take action if those strict standards and regulations are not upheld. Provinces and territories determine whether or not how plasma is collected in their jurisdictions, including whether the sites pay donors for their donations, and a number of provinces, including Ontario, Quebec, and British Columbia, do not currently allow for paid plasma donation. We're committed to ensuring that the collection of plasma and its process...
They cut her off.
The honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Not a fan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Tecumseh First Nation are still waiting to find out from the Canadian Energy Regulator the reasons for which the energy regulator gave in to TMX pipeline and approved a new route that violates a key commitment to enter that territory of the First Nation. Without the reasons, the First Nation can't pursue its court remedy. But one thing they don't have to wait for is construction to begin through the most sacred areas of their territory, known as the Pipsel. The Pipsel area is essentially, for that community, what the Garden of Eden is for people in the Judeo-Christian tradition. Will this government instruct the Crown Corporation to stop destruction of the Pipsel, at least until the reasons are provided and legal remedies can be pursued?
That's a pretty good one, Elizabeth May. She always comes firing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to highlight that our government is the one that put UNDRIP into law. That is after the Conservatives refused to even recognize UNDRIP as something that was worth the support. And we have just recently, in the past year, also put in the UNDRIP action plan. We're continuing on that work. But as far as the decision that the member opposite's referring to, I want to really emphasize that this is made by an independent quasi-judicial body. It's not a government agency, and that they have said that they will be providing reasons for decisions shortly. We're looking forward to seeing that.
Looking forward to happy hour, guys.
Time for question period we have today. Just a quick reminder before I go to points of order. Just the usage of T-shirts with words on them. Just make sure that we try to be careful when we do those ones.
Chris is trying to ruin the good time for everybody. So yeah, we're out of here. So that's the show. That's question period. That's what we're doing here. Having some fun, paying attention to the issues, what's going on, seeing what they have to share and say, make fun of them, because they're all a bunch of clowns in the circus, sausage makers at the sausage factory. It's foolish, but it's fun, and it's important to watch. And if you're out of tune, here's a great spot. We're getting out for now. Have a great long weekend, everybody. Sorry that we don't get the cheap or the lowered grocery prices. Doesn't look like it's going to happen for Thanksgiving weekend. We're out. Catch you on Tuesday. We'll be back for question period then. Check out my channel. We're out. Have a great weekend, everybody. And we're done. Bye for now.